In the storied annals of Rome, few emperors inspire as much fascination and revulsion as Lucius Aurelius Commodus. Reigning from 180 to 192 CE, Commodus was the son of the venerable emperor Marcus Aurelius, yet his legacy is marked by scandal, vanity, and violent spectacle. Posterity has saddled him with monikers ranging from the Gladiator emperor to the Roman Hercules, and ancient historians, such as Cassius Dio, Herodian, and the author of the Historia Augusta, paint him as a self-absorbed despot who debased the imperial office. But how did a man born into the apex of Roman aristocracy become a self-styled gladiator, driving the empire toward crisis? In this extended feature, we delve into Commodus's upbringing, his turbulent reign, the intrigues of his court, and the final conspiracy that ended his life. Our exploration seeks not only to understand the sensational stories told by ancient historians, but also to reveal the deeper truths behind the flamboyant emperor's ultimate downfall. A prince born to power. Lucius Aurelius Commodus was born on 31st August 16 CE in Lanuvium, near Rome, into one of the most illustrious lineages of the Roman Empire. His father, Marcus Aurelius, was a renowned philosopher-king, often referred to by historians as the last of the five good emperors. Under Marcus Aurelius' reign, the empire faced challenges from the Marcomannic Wars along the northern frontiers, as well as plague and economic strain. Nevertheless, the empire still retained much of its fabled strength and administrative stability. Twin birth. Commodus was born as one of a set of twins. His brother, Antoninus, died at the age of 4. This loss left Commodus the sole surviving male heir, amplifying the significance of his birth in the eyes of the court. Wealth and privilege. Raised in the Palatine residences, Commodus experienced wealth, cultural refinement, and constant attention from tutors, nurses, and court officials. Surrounded by sculptures of the empire's deified ancestors and the presence of the greatest philosophers of his day, the young prince was expected to grow into a model of virtue. From his earliest days, Commodus was groomed for future rule. His father took pains to secure the boy's status, conferring upon him the title of Caesar at a young age. By the time Commodus reached adolescence, there was little doubt he would someday inherit the purple, an unprecedented act in an age that had grown accustomed to the more meritocratic adoption practices of earlier emperors, such as Hadrian and Antoninus Pius. The burden of being heir to Marcus Aurelius, the so-called philosopher emperor, cannot be overstated. Marcus's meditations, composed in Greek, extol virtues like patience, justice, and temperance. He endeavored to instill these stoic ideals in his son, yet certain accounts claim Commodus chafed under the philosophical rigor. Marcus Aurelius engaged the best grammarians, rhetoricians, and philosophers for his son, hoping to mold him into a thoughtful, principled ruler. Reputedly, Commodus showed little interest in these sober pursuits, being more enthralled by physical training, sports, and the spectacle of gladiatorial contests. The final years of Marcus Aurelius's reign were consumed by the Marcomannic Wars, 166 to 180 CE. The boy Commodus sometimes joined his father on campaign, visiting frontier fortresses along the Danube. However, rather than forging a disciplined soldier, these war fronts allowed Commodus to witness the raw power of the legions, perhaps sowing the seeds of a more autocratic style of rule, one that would lean on brute force over philosophical counsel. Ancient historians frequently juxtapose Marcus Aurelius's stoicism with Commodus's hedonism, creating an image of a father who embodied the pinnacle of Roman virtue and a son who symbolized its decline. In 177 CE, Marcus Aurelius elevated his son to co-emperor, an unusual move at the time. For the next 3 years, they ostensibly governed the empire in tandem, albeit Marcus remained the ultimate authority. Commodus, by all accounts, was still learning the ropes. Whether he absorbed lessons of good governance is a matter of debate. When Marcus Aurelius died in March 180 CE, Rome suddenly had a new sole emperor, Commodus, 18 years old, inexperienced and thrust into the absolute pinnacle of power. Almost immediately, Commodus enacted policies that diverged from his father's approach. Instead of continuing the conflict to secure a more decisive victory, Commodus swiftly concluded a peace with the Germanic tribes, pulling back from additional territorial expansion. This move was welcomed by soldiers who were war-weary, yet condemned by certain senators who believed Marcus Aurelius's gains were squandered. Commodus's primary goal appeared to be a triumphant homecoming rather than solidifying Rome's frontiers. Eager for recognition and adoration, the new emperor indulged in lavish celebrations upon arrival. Accession to the throne brought Commodus into close contact with court favorites, who soon formed an influential coterie. Men such as Tigidius Perennis, Praetorian prefect, and Saoterus, Commodus's chamberlain, began exerting outsized influence. These favorites mediated access to the emperor, controlling petitioners and shaping his decrees. As a result, corruption thrived, sowing seeds of resentment among the senatorial class. While Commodus basked in his new role, hints of instability emerged. Some senators saw him as shallow and easily manipulated, lacking the gravitas of his father. Others believed that a few unscrupulous figures at court sought to control him, prioritizing personal wealth over the empire's well-being. Among Commodus's most controversial proclivities was his tendency towards self-aggrandizement. Emperors in Rome commonly promoted certain images or cults, yet Commodus pushed the practice toward extremes, publicly identifying himself with Hercules, wearing lion skins and wielding a club in official statues. Divine pretension. Ancient sources record that Commodus took the title Hercules Romanus, ordering statues to depict him in the hero's garb. In some inscriptions, he was even referred to as the son of Jupiter. Coinage and imagery. Imperial coinage from his later reign featured Commodus with Herculean iconography, lion scalp headdresses, the club, or the hero's attributes. This conflation of emperor and demigod signaled a break from the comparatively modest style of preceding emperors. Perhaps more shocking to Roman elites was Commodus's obsession with performing as a gladiator, arena appearances. He reportedly fought in the Colosseum or special amphitheaters, charging the public a fee to witness his battles. Stage-managed fights. Ancient accounts suggest the matches were rigged for the emperor's victory. His opponents were often armed with wooden swords or severely disadvantaged, ensuring Commodus faced no real danger. Public reaction. The plebeian crowds found it entertaining, even if they recognized it was a spectacle staged for their amusement. The Senate, however, was scandalized, seeing it as a disgrace for the emperor to lower himself to the status of a mere entertainer. Gladiators typically ranked low in Roman social hierarchy. He descended into the arena as if he were a champion, and yet no champion strove earnestly against him. All was pretense. From the earliest years of his reign, Commodus encountered plots against his life, some real, others perhaps fabricated. As with many Roman emperors, paranoia soon became a defining trait of his rule. Shortly after Commodus took sole power, his elder sister Lucilla, widow of Emperor Lucius Verus, reportedly conspired with several senators to assassinate him. The scheme failed. Lucilla was exiled and subsequently executed, a fate that swiftly demonstrated Commodus's resolve in dealing with threats to his throne. This episode deepened the rift between Commodus and the senatorial class, as many suspected that senators preferred a more tractable puppet or a different dynasty altogether. Saoterus. As the chamberlain who had served Commodus since youth, Saoterus wielded enormous influence. Jealous courtiers, including Clender, orchestrated his downfall, accusing him of abusing power. Once Saoterus was eliminated, new favorites stepped in. Clender. Rising from a lowly background, Marcus Aurelius Clender replaced Saoterus as the chief palace steward. He sold offices, manipulated appointments, and enriched himself mightily, incurring the wrath of many. Perennis, Commodus's Praetorian prefect, initially guided imperial decisions, but eventually, rumors spread that Perennis harbored imperial ambitions. He was accused of plotting to overthrow Commodus and swiftly executed. This revolving door of favorites signaled that Commodus was easily influenced, swayed by whomever currently held his ear. The empire's administration became unstable as new men rapidly ascended or were destroyed, provoking constant behind-the-scenes jockeying for power. One of the boldest expressions of Commodus's narcissism was his effort to rename the very heart of the empire. According to the Historia Augusta, Commodus declared Rome should be called Colonia Lucia Annia Commodiana, signifying the city was now the personal colony of its ruler. He also sought to rename the legions, the fleet, and even the Senate after himself, transforming them into the Commodian Legion, Commodian Fleet, and Commodian Senate. Popular ridicule. These changes were not widely embraced. Many citizens found it absurd to treat the eternal city as one man's vanity project. Street graffiti reportedly mocked Commodus, while the aristocracy seethed in private. Economic concerns. Renaming a city was not a trivial matter. It involved altering inscriptions, reissuing official documents, and adjusting currency. Each step required considerable expense, draining the treasury at a time when Rome faced other economic challenges. Commodus was also known to style himself a god on earth, going so far as to proclaim a new golden age under his rule. By renaming the city and public institutions, he advanced a quasi-religious cult of personality, an affront to traditional Roman piety. By the mid-80s CE, Commodus had alienated much of Rome's elite. Senate meetings devolved into theatrical sessions of forced flattery, where senators feared any sign of disapproval might cost them their lives. Meanwhile, the populace at large held mixed views. Bred in circuses, Commodus continued the tradition of public games and distributions, ensuring that many plebeians still received grain and entertaining spectacles. This ingratiated him with parts of the urban population, at least superficially. Economic strain. However, as Commodus raised taxes and tolerated corruption among his close advisors, trade and agricultural production suffered. Provinces bore the brunt of maladministration, leading to simmering discontent. Senatorial grievances. High-born families despised Commodus's obsession with the gladiatorial arena. He was rumored to appear half-naked in front of the Senate, brandishing weapons or demanding humiliating accolades. Cassius Dio recounts that senators were even forced to hail Commodus as the new Romulus, or Hercules reborn, illusions they found blasphemous. Rome's stability depended heavily on a reliable grain supply. Internal strife in North Africa, mismanagement among provincial officials, and episodes of local rebellion disrupted the flow of grain shipments to the capital. With the city's population topping 1 million, any significant delay could spark panic. The Clender fiasco. Under Clender's watch, widespread corruption in the grain supply chain led to a near famine. When the public learned of Clender's role, rioting erupted, culminating in demands for his death. Sensing the danger, Commodus conveniently sacrificed Clender, having him executed to placate the mob. Weakening administration. Such episodes illustrate the precarious nature of Commodus's government. Key positions were filled by sycophants and profiteers, unable or unwilling to manage essential state functions. Each new scandal further eroded confidence in the emperor's rule. Fearful of betrayals, Commodus became ever more paranoid as the 190s CE approached. According to Herodian, the emperor retreated into a world of indulgence, hosting endless banquets and enacting lethal punishments against real or imagined foes. The Historia Augusta speaks of daily executions, often ordered on the flimsiest of evidence. Senators and equestrians lived under constant threat. Hostile informers thrived, knowing they could curry favor by accusing unsuspecting targets. Commodus's fantasies of divinity intensified. He demanded the new year begin on his birthday, 31st August, and ordered monstrous tributes as if he were a living deity. Lavish ceremonies in the amphitheater saw Commodus slaying exotic beasts or cripples presented as giants, feeding his megalomania. Those seeking to end this reign of terror began scheming more urgently. Frightened senators and palace officials suspected that if Commodus lived much longer, the empire itself could collapse into civil war. Among Commodus's closest companions was Marcia, alternately described as a concubine or mistress. Some sources claim she was devoted to Commodus, yet also alarmed by his escalating madness. Ancient historians recount a pivotal moment. Commodus supposedly compiled a list of enemies he intended to execute. When Marcia discovered her own name on that list, along with those of high-ranking Praetorian prefect Aemilius Latus and Chamberlain Eclectus, she realized the emperor's paranoia was beyond containment. Marcia, Latus, and Eclectus formed an alliance with several other notables, concluding Commodus must be assassinated before he carried out his deadly plans. The conspirators recognized that if Commodus struck first, they would have no chance to defend themselves. On the final day of 192 CE, as Rome prepared for the New Year's celebrations, an event Commodus intended to mark by appearing as a gladiator at a major festival, the plotters made their move. According to the Historia Augusta, Marcia administered poison in Commodus's wine, hoping it would kill him without resorting to open violence. However, the poison only made Commodus violently ill. Some accounts claim he vomited the toxic substance, foiling the conspirators' plan. Fearing Commodus would recover and exact vengeance, the conspirators turned to Narcissus, the emperor's personal trainer or wrestling partner. In the subsequent altercation, Narcissus strangled Commodus, ending his life before the new year could dawn. With Commodus dead at just 31 years old, the Nerva-Antonine dynasty, which had guided Rome since 96 CE, effectively concluded. The Senate hailed the dawn of a new era, proclaiming Publius Helvius Pertinax emperor on the 1st January 993 CE. When news of Commodus' assassination broke, the reaction in Rome was mixed but predominantly jubilant among the elites. Senators rushed to condemn the deceased emperor. Damnatio Memoriae. The Senate declared Damnatio Memoriae upon Commodus, erasing his name from monuments, inscriptions, and official records where possible. Public relief. The city had grown weary of Commodus' unpredictable tyranny. Freed from daily terror, many citizens welcomed Pertinax, albeit their hopes would be short-lived, as the empire soon descended into a turbulent year of the five emperors. Despite the official condemnation, Commodus retained a certain fascination among commoners who had been enthralled by his arena appearances. Some might have lamented losing their flamboyant showman, even if he was dangerously unhinged. Ancient authors, particularly Cassius Dio and the Historia Augusta, portray Commodus as a sadistic tyrant. Modern historians wrestle with whether these accounts are hyperbolic or reflective of deeper biases. Senatorial bias. Much of the surviving historical narrative comes from senatorial or equestrian authors whose class Commodus repeatedly humiliated. Their works may exaggerate his cruelty to justify their hatred. Nevertheless, the consistency of anecdotes from multiple sources suggests that Commodus's behavior was indeed widely scorned. Popularity. Among the masses, Commodus's emphasis on gladiatorial shows and public distributions may have endeared him to certain segments of the urban poor. No direct testimony from the plebeian population survives, so the extent of their loyalty remains uncertain. In times of crisis, especially after mid-century, some emperors used public games to maintain favor. Commodus followed this pattern to an extreme, indicating a canny awareness of crowd dynamics. Psychological factors. Some scholars propose that Commodus exhibited signs of mental instability, possibly exacerbated by inbreeding or the tremendous pressures of rule. Others point to a personality shaped by sycophants, indulgence, and the lack of strong moral guidance once Marcus Aurelius was gone. Lucius Aurelius Commodus stands out in Roman history as a figure of stark contrast, the heir of a philosopher king who devolved into the self-styled gladiator emperor. His reign, while marked by flamboyant spectacles and grandiose displays of personal power, also underscored the fragility of the imperial system. Lacking the discipline and statesmanship that had characterized his father, Commodus was easily manipulated by palace favorites and driven by personal vanity. His obsession with Hercules' imagery and gladiatorial combat further alienated Rome's patrician class, who viewed these actions as an affront to the dignity of empire. Ultimately, Commodus's downfall came not at the hands of a foreign invader or a civil war, but through a domestic conspiracy orchestrated by those closest to him. His paranoid reign sowed the seeds of betrayal in his own household. Marcia, the Praetorian prefect Latus, and Narcissus became the instruments of his demise, a final testament to the precarious dance of power within the imperial court. In the aftermath, Roman chroniclers lost no time condemning him as a tyrant, awarding Commodus a place among the empire's most infamous rulers. The Senate's Damnatio Memoriae attempted to obliterate his legacy, but ironically served only to amplify the curiosity surrounding him. Modern historians, while acknowledging the biases of ancient sources, still find ample evidence of excess and brutality in his administration. Thus, Commodus endures in the popular imagination as Rome's archetypal gladiator emperor, a symbol of how absolute power can corrode even the greatest dynasties, and a reminder that the line between spectacle and statecraft can, at times, dangerously blur. We proclaim Commodus a stranger to his father's house, for in him was none of that virtue which so exalted Marcus Aurelius. Paraphrase of the Historia Augusta, Life of Commodus.